The morning sun had barely touched the marble floors of the Blackwell mansion when Kesha Williams heard the words that would change everything. She was arranging fresh flowers in the hallway vase, her hands steady despite working since 4 in the morning, when she heard Richard Blackwell's voice floating through the slightly open study door. The words were cold and sharp, like ice breaking on concrete. Patricia needs to die tonight. Make it look natural. She's 46, no children, parents deceased. Everything goes to me as her husband. The doctor is ready to sign whatever we need. Kesha's breath caught in her throat. Her fingers trembled around the flower stems. Patricia Blackwell, the woman who had given her a job when no one else would hire a black woman from the rough neighborhoods of Brooklyn, was about to be murdered by her own husband. Kesha moved silently toward the study door. Her years of working in wealthy homes teach her how to walk without making a sound. Through the crack, she could see Richard sitting at his expensive desk, his phone pressed to his ear, his handsome face twisted into an ugly smile. Yes, the sleeping pills are already crushed. I'll put them in her wine at dinner. Dr. Morrison will arrive in the morning to declare it a heart attack from stress. We've been building this story for months, remember? Everyone knows how hard she works, how tired she's been looking. The person on the other end of the phone said something that made Richard laugh. It was a sound that made Kesha's stomach turn. Don't worry about the cook. She's nobody, just some poor woman from the ghetto who should be grateful she has a job. She sees nothing, hears nothing, knows nothing. People like her learned long ago to keep their mouths shut if they want to keep eating. The words burned through Kesha like fire. She had heard similar words her whole life. When she was 16 and her mother died, leaving her alone on the streets. When she was 18 and trying to get her first real job, only to be told she wasn't the right fit. When she was 25 and working 3 jobs just to pay for night school. People like Richard had always looked through her, never at her. They saw her dark skin, her cheap clothes, her quiet manner, and decided she was nothing. But Kesha Williams had survived too much to be nothing. She had fought too hard to let another rich man destroy a good woman. Patricia had been different from the start. When Kesha had applied for the cook position 2 years ago, Patricia had actually looked her in the eye during the interview. She had asked about Kesha's dreams, her favorite recipes, her family. When Kesha mentioned she was taking online college courses, Patricia had immediately offered to adjust her schedule so she could study. Patricia ate Kesha's food with genuine appreciation, always asking about the spices, the techniques, the stories behind the dishes. She remembered Kesha's birthday, asked about her sick aunt in Georgia, and had even helped pay for the funeral when the aunt passed away. Richard continued talking on the phone, each word digging Patricia's grave deeper. The life insurance is worth $50 million. The hotel chain is worth $800 million. Her investment portfolio is another $200 million. Once she's gone, I can finally live the life I deserve. No more pretending to care about her stupid charity events. No more listening to her talk about quarterly reports and expansion plans. Stephanie and I can finally be together publicly. She's already picked out a house in Miami. Kesha's mind raced. Stephanie must be the young blonde woman Richard had been bringing around when Patricia was traveling for business. The one he introduced as his personal trainer, though Kesha had never seen him exercise once. The one who wore designer clothes no personal trainer could afford and looked at Patricia's photos with cold, calculating eyes. Moving silently back to the kitchen, Kesha pulled out her phone with shaking hands. She started recording, then crept back toward the study. Richard was still talking, still planning, still confident in his evil scheme. The best part is Patricia trusts me completely. 8 years of marriage, and she still believes I love her. She actually apologized to me last week for working so much, said she'd try to be home more often. I almost laughed in her face. If only she knew she was apologizing to her killer. Every word was being captured on Kesha's phone. Evidence. Proof. Protection. Her mother had always told her that the truth was the most powerful weapon a person could have. Now she held Richard's truth in her hand, ugly and poisonous and undeniable. The kitchen was Kesha's domain, her sanctuary within the massive mansion. She knew every pot, every pan, every knife. She knew which floorboards creaked and which ones were silent. She knew the house's rhythms like her own heartbeat. At noon, Patricia would come home for lunch. At 12:15, she would sit at the kitchen island and talk to Kesha while eating. At 12:45, she would return to her office. Richard would golf until 3. This gave Kesha time to think, to plan, to prepare. She thought about calling the police immediately, but she knew how these things worked. Richard was rich, white, connected. He played golf with judges, had dinner with the police chief, donated to the mayor's campaign. His word against hers would be no contest. She needed more than just one recording. She needed enough evidence that even Richard's money couldn't make it disappear. When Patricia came home for lunch, Kesha watched her with new eyes. The woman looked tired, older than her 46 years. The stress of running a hotel empire was written in the lines around her eyes, the slight slump of her shoulders. But there was still kindness in her face, still warmth in her smile when she saw Kesha. "Something smells amazing," Patricia said, sitting at her usual spot. "You always know exactly what I need, Kesha. I don't know what I'd do without you." The words hit Kesha like a punch. Without her, Patricia would die tonight. Without her, Richard would win. Without her, evil would triumph over good once again. But Kesha was here, and she would not let that happen. "Mrs. Patricia," Kesha said carefully, serving the soup she'd made, "you look very tired today. Maybe you should rest this afternoon. Skip dinner tonight. Go to bed early." Patricia laughed softly. "I wish I could. But Richard is insisting on a romantic dinner tonight. He's been so sweet lately, bringing me flowers, planning special evenings. I think he's trying to reconnect after all these years of growing apart." Kesha's hands tightened on the serving spoon. Richard wasn't trying to reconnect. He was setting the stage for murder. Every flower, every romantic gesture, every sweet word was part of his plan to make her death look natural. The grieving husband who had been trying so hard to save his marriage, only to lose his wife to a sudden heart attack. People would probably comfort him at the funeral, tell him how wonderful he'd been to her in her final days. The afternoon passed in a blur of preparation. Kesha cooked dinner as usual, but her mind was elsewhere. She set up her phone to record in multiple locations. She carefully noted every detail of Richard's behavior when he came home. He was whistling, smiling, practically dancing through the door, the face of a man about to become very rich. "Kesha," he called out in his fake friendly voice, "make sure dinner is perfect tonight. I want Patricia to have a meal she'll never forget." The irony of his words made Kesha feel sick. A meal she'll never forget, because it would be her last. But Richard had made a fatal mistake. He had assumed Kesha was powerless, invisible, insignificant. He had no idea that she had survived worse than him, fought harder than him, and was smarter than he could ever imagine. When Kesha was 19, she had witnessed a murder in the restaurant where she worked. The owner had killed a customer who threatened to expose his drug dealing. Everyone else had been too scared to speak up. But Kesha had gathered evidence, recorded conversations, documented everything. When she finally went to the FBI, her testimony had put 5 dangerous men in prison. She had lived in witness protection for a year, learning how the system worked, how to build a case that couldn't be ignored. That experience had taught her that justice was possible, but only if you were willing to fight for it with everything you had. Now, watching Richard pour wine into Patricia's glass, Kesha knew this was another fight she couldn't walk away from. She had survived the streets, survived poverty, survived violence and racism, and a system designed to keep her down. She would not let Richard Blackwell add Patricia to his list of victims. "This wine is exceptional," Richard said, watching Patricia take a sip. "I had it specially imported from France. $18,000 a bottle. Nothing but the best for my beautiful wife." Patricia smiled, touched by what she thought was affection. Kesha, standing by the kitchen door, saw the predator's grin Richard tried to hide. She had already switched the glasses when Richard wasn't looking, pouring his poisoned wine down the sink and replacing it with regular wine from an identical bottle. Patricia was drinking safe wine, while Richard believed he was watching her drink her death. The arrogance of evil men always became their downfall. They were so confident in their superiority that they never noticed the people they considered beneath them working against them. As dinner continued, Richard kept filling Patricia's glass, kept watching her drink, kept making comments about how tired she looked. "You work too hard, darling. You need to learn to relax. Your health is more important than any business deal." Each word was perfectly crafted to establish his narrative. The concerned husband who had been warning his workaholic wife to slow down. Kesha recorded it all, her phone hidden but perfectly positioned. She also noticed Richard checking his watch repeatedly, glancing at his phone, texting someone under the table, probably Dr. Morrison, preparing for his morning visit to declare Patricia dead from natural causes. At 9 o'clock, Patricia yawned and stood up from the table. "You're right, Richard. I am tired. I think I'll go to bed early tonight." Richard jumped up, overly eager. "Let me help you upstairs. You seem a bit unsteady." Patricia wasn't unsteady at all, but Richard needed witnesses to see him being the devoted husband. Kesha watched him go upstairs, then quickly pulled out her phone. She had a contact from her witness protection days, FBI agent Sarah Martinez, who had told her to call if she ever needed help. Tonight, she needed help more than ever. "Sarah, it's Kesha Williams. I'm working in the Hamptons, and my employer is about to be murdered by her husband. I have recordings, evidence, everything. But he has a doctor coming in the morning to declare her dead from natural causes. We need help now." Sarah's response was immediate. "Send me everything you have. We're on our way. Keep Patricia safe, no matter what." Kesha sent the recordings, the videos, the photos she'd taken of Richard's phone when he'd left it unattended. Then she went upstairs, moving silently through the hallways she knew so well. Patricia's bedroom door was closed, but Kesha could hear Richard inside, talking on his phone again. "She's asleep. The pills work perfectly. By morning, she'll be gone and I'll be free. Make sure Stephanie has her alibi ready. We can't be together publicly for at least 6 months after the funeral." Kesha knocked softly on the door. "Mr. Richard? Mrs. Patricia asked me to bring her some tea." Richard opened the door, annoyed. "She's sleeping. She doesn't need tea." But behind him, Kesha could see Patricia in bed, and her trained eye noticed something Richard's arrogance had made him miss. Patricia wasn't deeply asleep. Her breathing was too regular, too controlled. She was pretending. "I'll just leave her on the nightstand," Kesha said, pushing past Richard. As she set down the tea tray, she leaned close to Patricia and whispered so quietly that Richard couldn't hear. "Don't speak. Help is coming. Keep pretending to sleep." Patricia's eyelids fluttered just slightly, acknowledging the message. Kesha turned to Richard with her usual subservient expression. "Will you need anything else tonight, sir?" Richard waved her away dismissively. "No. Take the rest of the night off. In fact, take tomorrow off too. I'll handle everything myself in the morning." Of course he would. He needed Kesha gone when the doctor arrived to declare Patricia dead. Kesha went back to the kitchen, but didn't leave the house. Instead, she positioned herself where she could watch both the front and back doors. At midnight, Richard came downstairs and made another phone call from his study. "Morrison, be here at 7 sharp. Bring all the paperwork already filled out. I'll have called 911 by then, hysterical about my wife not waking up. You'll arrive as a family doctor, declare her dead from heart failure brought on by stress, and we'll have her cremated by tomorrow night. No autopsy needed when the family doctor confirms natural causes." Dr. Morrison's voice was clear through the phone speaker. "The death certificate is already prepared. $5 million, as agreed, transferred to my Cayman Islands account once this is done." Kesha recorded every word, every detail, every piece of evidence that would bury both men. At 2 a.m, she heard car engines approaching the house. Not the loud sirens of regular police, but the quiet arrival of federal agents who knew how to approach without alerting. Suspects. Sarah Martinez entered through the kitchen door, accompanied by 6 other agents. "Kesha, you did the right thing calling us. We've been investigating Dr. Morrison for 2 years. He's been involved in at least 4 suspicious deaths. This is the evidence we needed to finally stop him." Kesha felt relief flood through her body. "Patricia is upstairs, pretending to be unconscious. Richard thinks his poison worked, but I switched the glasses. She's safe, but he can't know that yet. Sarah smiled grimly. Perfect. We'll wait until he calls 911. We want him to fully commit to his crime. Make it impossible for any lawyer to claim it was just talk. They positioned themselves throughout the house, hidden but ready. Kesha stayed in the kitchen, playing her role as the invisible cook who knew nothing. At 6:30 in the morning, Richard's performance began. He ran downstairs in his pajamas, phone in hand, fake panic in his voice. Patricia, wake up. Oh, God, something's wrong with my wife. She won't wake up. Please send an ambulance. His acting was convincing, but Kesha had heard his real voice on all those recorded calls. She knew the difference between Richard's truth and Richard's lies. Dr. Morrison arrived at 7, just as planned. He walked in with his medical bag and his pre-signed death certificate, ready to declare Patricia dead, without even properly examining her. Richard met him at the door, still maintaining his grieving husband act. Doctor, thank God you're here. I found her this morning. She won't respond. I think she's gone. Dr. Morrison put on a show of checking Patricia's pulse, listening to her heart, examining her pupils. All fake, all performance of the household staff. He assumed we're watching. I'm afraid she's past Richard. Her heart gave out. I warned her about the stress. I'm so sorry for your loss. That's when the FBI agents emerged from their hiding spots, weapons drawn, badges displayed. Richard Blackwell, Dr. Harold Morrison, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, attempted murder, insurance fraud, and multiple other charges. Richard's face went from fake grief to real shock in an instant. What? This is insane. My wife is dead. You can't arrest me at a time like this. Sarah Martinez smiled coldly. Your wife isn't dead, Mr. Blackwell. She's very much alive. And we have recordings of you planning her murder, discussing payment with Dr. Morrison, and celebrating her death before it even happened. Patricia sat up in bed, very much alive, very much awake, and very much aware of everything her husband had tried to do to her. The look on Richard's face was one Kesha will remember forever. Complete disbelief, total humiliation, and the dawning realization that he had been outsmarted by the two women he had underestimated most. Hello, Richard, Patricia said quietly. I heard everything. Every plan, every lie, every disgusting word about how you were going to spend my money with your girlfriend. But you made one crucial mistake. You forgot that Kesha is family to me, and family protects each other. Richard turned to Kesha, his face purple with rage. You did this. You're nothing. You're nobody. You're just a cook. Kesha stepped forward, no longer the invisible servant, no longer the woman who kept her head down and her mouth shut. Yes, I'm a cook. I'm also the woman who saved Patricia's life. I'm the woman who recorded every confession you made. I'm the woman who made sure you'll spend the rest of your life in prison. You thought I was nobody, Richard, but nobody just destroyed your entire world. As the FBI agent handcuffed Richard and Dr. Morrison, dragging them toward the waiting cars, Richard kept screaming about how this was impossible, how a mere cook couldn't have done this to him. Dr. Morrison was silent, his face gray, knowing that his medical career was over and his freedom was gone. Stephanie, the girlfriend, was arrested at her apartment in the city, charged as an accomplice in the murder plot. The whole sick conspiracy unraveled in a matter of hours, all because one man had been arrogant enough to believe that the woman who cooked his meals was too insignificant to notice or care about his evil plans. Patricia stood in her bedroom, watching through the window as her husband was driven away in an FBI vehicle. Tears ran down her face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of relief, of gratitude, of a freedom she didn't even know she had lost. Kesha, she said, turning to the woman who had saved her life. I don't even know how to thank you. You risked everything for me. Why? Kesha moved to stand beside her employer, her friend, the woman who had shown her kindness when the world had been cruel. Because you saw me, Mrs. Patricia. When everyone else looked through me, you saw me. You treated me like a person, not just a function. And because my mama taught me that when you see evil, You don't close your eyes and hope it goes away. You stand up, you speak truth, and you fight back. Patricia pulled Kesha into a tight hug, both women crying now. You're not my cook anymore, Kesha. I want you to be my head of security. I want you to help me make sure something like this never happens again. And I want to pay for you to finish your college degree, get your investigator's license. Whatever you want to do, you saved my life. Let me help you build yours. Kesha thought about all the nights she had studied by candlelight because the electricity was cut off, all the jobs she had worked just to survive, all the time she had been told she would never amount to anything. And now here she was, being offered a future she had only dreamed about. I accept, Kesha said, wiping her tears. But first, we need to go through everything Richard had access to. Bank accounts, passwords, documents. Men like him always have backup plans, and we need to make sure he can't hurt you from prison. Patricia nodded, impressed once again by Kesha's intelligence and foresight. You really did think of everything, didn't you? Kesha smiled, remembering her mother's words from so many years ago. My mama used to say, "Baby, they'll underestimate you because of your skin, your situation, your silence. Let them. But while they're busy thinking you're nothing, you be busy becoming everything." Over the next few weeks, the full extent of Richard's crimes came to light. He and Dr. Morrison had been involved in 3 other suspicious deaths over the past 5 years, all wealthy women whose husbands had inherited everything. The FBI found evidence of offshore accounts, money laundering, and a web of corruption that reached into the highest levels of society. Richard's family disowned him. His country club revoked his membership. His business partners distanced themselves. The man who had thought himself untouchable found himself utterly alone, facing life in prison, destroyed by the woman he had dismissed as just a cook. Kesha testified at the trial, her evidence and recordings playing a crucial role in conviction. She sat in that courtroom, wearing a suit Patricia had bought her, looking Richard directly in the eye as she told her truth. She wasn't afraid anymore. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was Kesha Williams, the woman who had brought down a killer with nothing but courage, intelligence, and an iPhone. The media called her a hero. The district attorney called her brilliant. Patricia called her family. But Kesha knew what she really was, a survivor who had refused to let evil win. 6 months after Richard's conviction, Kesha graduated with a degree in criminal justice, Patricia cheering loudly from the audience. She opened her own private investigation firm, specializing in protecting women from domestic violence and financial abuse. Her first client was a senator's wife who suspected her husband was planning something sinister. Her second was a CEO who had received death threats from a business partner. Her third was a young woman from Brooklyn, much like Kesha had been, who needed help escaping an abusive relationship but had no money to pay. Kesha took that case for free, remembering what it was like to have nowhere to turn. Richard, meanwhile, spent his days in a federal prison cell, doing laundry and cleaning toilets, the same kind of work he had once considered beneath him. His fortune was gone, seized by the government and distributed to the families of his victims. Stephanie had fled the country but was caught in Costa Rica and extradited back to face trial. Dr. Morrison lost his medical license and would never practice medicine again. The entire network of evil they had built crumbled to dust, all because they had underestimated one woman. On the 1-year anniversary of the night Kesha saved her life, Patricia hosted a dinner in her honor. The guest list included FBI agents, prosecutors, journalists, and other women Kesha had helped through her investigation firm. As Patricia raised her glass for a toast, she said, "They say money is power. They say connections are power. They say privilege is power. But Kesha taught me that real power is courage. Real power is choosing to do what's right even when you're afraid. Real power is speaking truth when everyone expects you to stay silent." Kesha stood up, her own glass raised, thinking of her mother, who had died too young, but had given her the strength to survive anything. "My mama used to tell me, don't speak when evil men are listening, baby. But when the time comes to act, you roar so loud that heaven and earth can hear you." Well, I roared, and Richard Blackwell heard me. Dr. Morrison heard me. Every man who thinks he can destroy women for money heard me. And they'll keep hearing me, because I'm not done roaring yet." The room erupted in applause, but Kesha's mind was already on her next case. Another woman in danger. Another predator who thought he was untouchable. Another chance to prove that the people society considers invisible are often the ones who see everything. She thought about the title of the book she was writing about the case. Don't Speak. It was Richard's first mistake, assuming she would stay silent. It was also his last, because Kesha Williams had learned long ago that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is refuse to be silenced. As the dinner continued, Kesha's phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Martinez at the FBI. "We have another case. 3 women have died under suspicious circumstances, all connected to the same financial advisor. We need your help." Kesha smiled, excused herself from the table, and stepped out to make the call. There was work to do, lives to save, justice to serve. Richard Blackwell had thought she was just a cook, nobody important, nobody who mattered. But Kesha Williams had become something Richard never saw coming. The defender of the invisible, the voice of the silence, the nightmare of every predator who mistook kindness for weakness. Standing on Patricia's terrace, looking out at the lights of New York City in the distance, Kesha thought about how far she'd come. From homeless teenager to respected investigator. From invisible servant to recognized hero. From silenced woman to powerful voice. The journey hadn't been easy, but every struggle had prepared her for that moment when she heard Richard planning Patricia's murder. Every hardship had given her the strength to act when action was needed most. Every time someone had told her she was nothing, it had fueled her determination to become something more. Don't speak. Richard had assumed about her. Don't speak. Society had demanded of her. Don't speak. Poverty and racism and sexism had tried to enforce upon her. But Kesha Williams had spoken. She had spoken with courage, with intelligence, with determination. She had spoken truth to power and brought down those who thought themselves untouchable. And she would keep speaking, keep fighting, keep protecting those who needed her voice. Because that's what heroes do. They speak when silence would be easier. They fight when surrender would be safer. They stand up when staying down would be expected. As she walked back into the dinner, Patricia caught her eye and smiled. They had both survived something terrible, both grown stronger from it. Both found their voices in the aftermath of near tragedy. Richard had tried to take everything from them, but instead, he had given them something priceless. The knowledge of their own power, the proof of their own strength, and the bond of survival that would connect them forever. Don't speak had been Richard's expectation, his demand, his fatal assumption. But speaking truth, speaking loudly, speaking without fear had been their salvation. And neither woman would ever be silent again. The story of Don't Speak became legend in certain circles. Women in dangerous marriages heard about the cook who saved her employer and found courage to seek help. Private investigators studied Kesha's methods of evidence collection. Law enforcement used the case as a training example of how domestic murder plots could be hidden in plain sight. But for Kesha, it was more than a case, more than a victory, more than a career-making moment. It was proof that every person matters, every voice counts, and every act of courage can change the world. She had been told her whole life that she was nobody, nothing, insignificant. Richard Blackwell had believed it, and that belief had been his downfall, because Kesha Williams was somebody. She was a woman who refused to let evil win, and that, more than any title or award or recognition, was her greatest triumph.